everyone. Welcome, Shannon. It's so nice to see you virtually, even
Yeah.
though we haven't met before. I
Mhm.
am so looking forward to this conversation, to getting to know you and your programming at your school a little bit better. So, do you want to start off with just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you as a
Yeah,
teacher?
absolutely. Hi, I'm Shannon Egan. I am from the United States, but I'm currently working in Brazil at Escola Americana de Belo Horizonte in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. I've been a teacher for the last 7 years. This is my first year back teaching international. I started off by teaching in Nagoya International School in Japan, and then I went back to the United States to teach for a little bit, and now I'm back international in Brazil, and I'm loving it. It's such a great time.
It's so nice to hear your journey of where you taught before and where you are right now. I am looking forward to hearing about translanguaging. Tell us a little bit more about how you and your partner are working with two different languages. So I read somewhere, and you can
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong, there's like 228 languages currently spoken in Brazil, out of which 217 are indigenous languages. So I was very curious how you, as an English language speaker, speaks teaches in a country that is has so many different cultures and languages, and how you work together with your colleague to make it a successful experience. So walk us through what the process is.
Yeah, it's actually been a really, really fun time getting to know this translanguaging experience. This is my first time working at an international school that has a majority population of students who speak Portuguese. Um, so I've never spoken Portuguese before. I'm learning as I go, since this is my first year at the school. But with the diversity of languages within Brazil, we still have our majority of our students speak Portuguese. And the way that my school does it is that every single lower school classroom has a foreign hired teacher who speaks English, and then a Brazilian co-teacher in the classroom who is fluent in both English and Portuguese. It's been a really fun experience because usually the majority of our students, by the time they get up to fifth grade, which is the grade that I teach, they are pretty fluent in English. But every now and then you also get students um, from other countries as well. I have a student right now who speaks only Japanese, and then we also have students who are relatively new to the English language as well. So the idea of translanguaging in the classroom is super important so that we can make sure we create a community feel with all of the diverse languages in our classroom.
And I
It's
really like
been
the aspect of how you let your students speak any language as long as they want to. If you
Yes.
don't understand something, they're open to asking questions and learning, just like you are as a teacher. How do you feel about that?
It's been very fun. Again, I'm very new to the translanguaging world. Translanguaging is not new in international communities, and it's not new in bilingual communities as well, but it still feels very new to me. Luckily, my co-teacher, Mr. Nhiki, he is my Brazilian co-teacher. He has been so helpful on this journey, but it's such a wonderful experience to be able to learn alongside your students. For my classroom, for example, has a higher percentage of new to English speakers than most other classrooms in my school. So it's been a particularly special experience because I have a lot of students who are learning English, and then I myself am learning Portuguese as well. So it becomes a fluent classroom community of exchanging languages and exchanging ideas in whatever language that they decide to speak. Mr. Nhiki does a really great job of translanguaging as I'm teaching, and then I work on translanguaging while he's teaching as well. So anything that I say in English, he'll say in Portuguese. And then if I'm trying to give instructions, I usually ask the students to tell me how to say it in Portuguese, and then I practice it with them. And slowly over the course of the year, I've started to kind of memorize those phrases and be able to give more instructions in Portuguese. And as they've gotten better in English as well, they've been able to communicate with me in English. It's been really rewarding to see how the kids have grown throughout the year. I have some students who've come into my classroom speaking little to no English, and now that we're mostly through the school year, they're able to communicate really complex ideas in English and in Portuguese, going back and forth between the two languages in both their reading, in their writing, and just in their general speaking capabilities. It's been a really rewarding
And
experience.
it's comfortable, right? It creates
Mhm.
that environment of comfort where your students can be making mistakes, learning, and they see you making mistakes and learning alongside them, because learning a language is not easy. No one can tell you that it's easy, because I know it's not. And to be able to have that opportunity to make mistakes, ask questions, create a climate of it's okay, we're all learning together, and it's important to consider both languages important. I thought that was really valuable, so it was really nice to hear how you and your teammate taught together. So it was a new concept for me, learning. So I like this series because I get to explore, ask questions, and learn from the outside about what's happening inside a different school. And I have this privilege to share this with everybody else who's watching, Shannon. So it's really nice. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your work with identity maps. So
Mhm.
I love that concept. I know it came from research and you really liked it and you went ahead with it. And that's how we always work, right? As educators, as teachers, we
Absolutely.
if we an idea is awesome and it resonates with us, that's what we run with it. So I really like that idea. And I was wondering if you can dive a little bit deeper and walk us through how you started and what students are doing, and then how you worked with staff at your school to get them more comfortable with identity maps so you can connect and build that climate in your school.
Yeah, so the classroom is an inherently vulnerable space. We ask students to be vulnerable with us every day by sharing their thoughts and their feelings, by sharing who they are as people. And in order to create a safe space for that vulnerability, you really have to put in the active effort to be able to get to know your students and allow them to get to know you as well. I think for me, in my mind, gone are the days where the teacher is this mysterious person at the front of the classroom who talks at you and tells you to do things, and then you just have to listen. If I expect my students to be vulnerable with me, I also have to show that same vulnerability. So that's kind of where identity mapping comes in. I like to start off the school year working on sharing who we are as people, because that is really the cornerstone of being able to feel safe in a classroom. You can't feel safe if you don't know who the people are around you. So as I've been doing research throughout my career and education, I found educators who really focused a lot on identity mapping as a part of their anti-bias, anti-racist practice. And that was something that really resonated with me, especially as I was going international. It's really important to take into account the identities of my students and how they might be inherently different from my own because they are from a different cultural background, from a different country, from a different language. So at the start of the year, part of the IB program is they have different units throughout the year that
Explain
all of
what
the students.
IB is for staff
So,
watching or students watching or parents and community members watching who don't know what that is.
yeah. IB is the International Baccalaureate Program, and it is a program and curriculum that is adopted in many international schools around the world. And the idea of it is that it's an inquiry-based learning program where students inquire into different themes throughout the year and across their time in the PYP, which is the primary years program or the kind of elementary years program of the IB. All of the students inquire across the same topics, but they inquire through different pathways. So one of our units of the year is who we are, and we ask the students to inquire into who we are in different ways, in different grade levels that might look different, like inquiring into what your community looks like, or inquiring into the ideas of what your interests are. In fifth grade, we decided to focus on who we are through our identities, both visible and invisible. And that's where identity mapping really came in. When we ask students to share who we are, they first need to understand how to understand themselves. So identity mapping can really help with that. The way that we structured it was we first explored the idea of personal traits like what our hair color is and what our eye color is and what we like, what our likes and dislikes are, what our fears and our strengths and our weaknesses and our hopes are. And then from there, we also share different ideas of how society might define us, like race, gender, ethnicity, age. And then from there, we started to explore what aspects of our personal traits and our societal traits are invisible to others, so they don't know it when they see it, and what parts are visible, which asks kids to really delve deep into how are we perceived by society, and how do I show people who I am every single day, which has been a really wonderful journey. And we do that through kind of beginning stages of identity mapping. Once the students are able to identify the invisible parts of themselves, I usually have them make a secondary identity map that they will share with the class, where they can choose the most important parts of who they are and how they want to share that with the class. And
building that climate, I hear a lot in your voice and what you're doing, that you have that climate of safety built
yes.
in. So if students share something with you that they don't want to share out with anyone else, that's okay.
Yes,
They're comforted
absolutely.
to share what they want.
Yes, vulnerability is a really wonderful thing in the classroom, and it really comes with student choice. You cannot force a student to share who they are with their classmates. They need to feel comforted, but also they need to have the agency to be able to choose how they show themselves to others. And that means teaching them how to be brave and how to be risk takers. That's one of our IB learner profiles. It's what we hope to build in our students, is being risk takers. But it's also important that they have control over how they share themselves, and that they also get the chance to have agency over sharing what they think is important about them. And that's the wonderful thing about identity mapping, is how you identify in 5th grade might grow and change and shift to the end of 5th grade. It might grow and change and shift as you continue to get older, because as you experience more life, you learn a little bit more about what's important to who makes you who you are.
Now,
And an
if you
important aspect.
pivot
Sorry?
from what you're doing in your classroom to when you pivoted to working with staff, what were the challenges? What was the excitement? What was the comfort level of teachers sharing and or working with it? I think the most important part is to work and understand about your culture. But how did you find working with teachers about compared to the students?
For this first year, my work really centered around working with my teammates. So within the 5th grade team, because this was the focus of our specific unit. And of course, we always share our thoughts and our feelings with other teachers as well. But I think what was really important is, again, breaking out of that idea that teachers need to be this secretive, unknown person, this mystery human at the front of the classroom, and really being able to show who we are and what we think is important about ourselves. Luckily, my team is extremely receptive to all new ideas. And so they were very on board with being able to share with their students who they are as well. And then the school is a wonderful place that really does encourage sharing about your own identities too. This was not directly connected to identity mapping, but around the same time that we were doing identity mapping, the school did something called Family Day, where they allowed students to create videos of themselves and their families, and teachers as well to create a video of them and their families sharing who they are as a family. And then we did that virtually because of COVID, but it was a wonderful way to be able to share with the community who each person is in the context of their family. And that was something that we also worked on in our Who We Are unit. Family identity is a really important part of identity in general, but especially culturally within Brazil, family structure is really important and family connections are really important. A lot of my students have very big families and they're close with their cousins and their aunts and their uncles, and they see their grandparents every weekend, and family is a really important part of who they are. So as a part of our Who We Are unit, after we did individual investigations and individual identity maps, we also asked the students to investigate into their family identities as well. And we sent
Amazing.
a family identity scavenger hunt where the students could pick a couple of different scavenger hunt items to be able to share with the class, like something that someone in their family made, or that something that was important to someone in their family, or an important family recipe, or a tradition that they have in their family that they wanted to share. We
I
asked them
love that.
to investigate into the roles of their family members, who does the dishes, or who makes meals, or who, how does your family structure run? And that
It's a
created
great
something.
opportunity to actually work with what they're bringing into the classroom and then expand the knowledge, right? So if they bring in a perspective of every family is a mom and dad and a brother and a sister, then you can take that concept and now explore how there's different types of families. So there's a great trusting relationship where you now included them to reflect on their family, but then accept the fact that there's all kinds of families in the world and
Absolutely. All
explore
kinds of
that
families in
next
our
step.
community. Yeah, and
I
all kinds
like
of families in our immediate school community as well.
that.
So inviting people to share their families, again, is an inherently vulnerable thing,
It
and you have
is.
to create a safe community space in order to be able to do that. So it's really lovely that my school has created such a space that both faculty and staff and students feel comfortable sharing their families with each other, because that is such an important part of what makes us who we are.
Now I'm going to ask you the next question. I'm going to think because I love teaching via video resources or books and exploring diversity. And I know the next aspect of what you spoke to me about in the article is about building inclusive libraries and including other voices. And that's what made me understand there's a connection between the two of us. When I teach grade 2 in Ontario, and I have taught for a long time, but I always have, even as a new teacher, loved the aspect of knowing this is my community that I teach in, but I teach as a part of a whole world. We live in an entire world. This is me, but I belong to a whole world full of 70 million or something like that educators that can make a huge difference in the life of our communities that we teach in. So tell me a little bit about your project. I know you're new at this, but you wanted to build a very inclusive school library, and I thought that was a wonderful idea. Tell me the process, where you're at, what you're doing. So if other teachers are watching and they wanted to build the same, how would they do it? What did you do? What was successful? What was not? Tell us more.
This was a very personal passion project for me. First of all, books are my first love. They're my first love because they were also my first struggle. I really struggled to learn how to read. And once I did learn how to read, reading became my passion. And something that I've worked on a lot over the past few years of my career is really expanding my understanding of books and what books need to be in the hands of students. So when I came to my new school this year, when I came to EABH, Escola Americana de Belo Horizonte, one thing that I immediately looked for was the classroom library. I think that is the cornerstone of every classroom, because it is one of the places where students can be transported outside of their immediate space through books. And that's why I love books so much. One thing that I noticed when I looked at our classroom library, and one thing that's quite common in a lot of international schools actually, is that classroom libraries can be very limited because it's very hard to get English books in non-predominantly English-speaking countries. You can really only do book orders maybe once a year because they can take 6 months to get to you, or they can take even longer to get to you. So that is one challenge that a lot of international educators face. And depending on where you are in the world, books are expensive and resources can be limited depending on what kind of school you teach in. So classroom libraries can both be a really empowering part of the classroom, but they can also be very challenging to keep updated and to keep on top of, but also to keep enriching, because the field of literature is always growing and always changing. And the books that were being published 10 years ago are very different than the books being published today. So seeing that need in my school was something that really sparked excitement for me. My school just started undertaking the Lucy Calkins Readers Writers Workshop, which is a workshop model way of teaching reading. And as an inherent part of that workshop, you need access to lots and lots of books. So
now a question, does it have to be physical books or can it be virtual books?
We do have virtual platforms for books. We have actually something called Avre de Livros, which is an online platform for Portuguese books. And then we also use Epic, which is a free resource for English books as well. But we also understand the importance of having a physical book in the hands of kids. Not that reading online is not just as important. That's something that I really had to change my mind about during COVID when we were virtually learning. Sometimes kids could only access books online. So that is another way that my ideas about books have grown. But when I saw this need at my school, I asked if I could make a committee to focus on creating a more enriching classroom library in our classrooms. And I used some work that I have done at my previous school in America to help me through this process. So what I did was I created an auditing checklist for the teachers at my school that was a list of different perspectives, themes, or topics that could show up in a book. And I asked the teachers to go through their classroom library and notice what was present and what wasn't present. What kinds of narratives were there? Is it mostly white boy characters? Do we have more girl characters? Is there a diversity of age? Is there a diversity of gender? Is there a diversity of race and ethnicity? Is there a diversity of family life and sexual orientation? I asked them to take a look in their classroom libraries and think about what narratives are absent. And this is something that's very typical when you research anti-bias, anti-racist work in the classroom, is asking what stories are present and asking what stories are not present. So that was the first step to our process. And I asked the teachers to kind of notice and reflect on what's not there. From there, based on what their responses were, I worked with a small committee of people to start creating book lists based on research that we had done. We used sources like The Conscious Kid. We also used resources like We Need Diverse Books and other library lists that we found online through blogs and other kinds of media. And we created a wish list of books that we thought spanned across a lot of those different aspects of identity. So it really felt like it connected strongly with our identity mapping work, because for each aspect of identity, we really should have at least a couple books that reflect that aspect of identity or the diversities within that aspect of identity. Because as many researchers and thinkers and speakers have said, kids need to be able to pick up a book and either see themselves, see another life reflected in that book, or be able to really step into a different world so that they can expand their global perspective. So that was a challenging feat, because I was working with maybe only 2 or 3 other teachers, and we were making book lists for preschool all the way through 5th grade. But it was a really enriching experience, because through that research, I was exposed to a lot of different books that I got very excited about, things that you really want to include in your classroom. But it really did open the door for conversations in our school community and in our teacher community about how we reflect the identities of our students in our books, but also how we reflect other communities in our libraries as well. And one area that we definitely are working on growing in as well is making sure we have a larger collection of Portuguese books. For an international school with a lot of native Portuguese speakers, we are really working on trying to make sure we have the same diversity of English-speaking books and Portuguese books.
Dual language. Try to get dual language so you can see both languages at the same time, kind of like the first thing you were doing with translanguaging, which is awesome.
Exactly.
I like the aspect how you got input from staff. You did research based, and I wanted to quickly tell you, like, I teach online currently, and it opened a whole new world of books when I taught online, because the biggest challenge in Ontario would be money and the costing of books. There's so much cost involved to replace the books, to maintain the books, to get those books from the classroom to the houses, to homes. And online, that all those challenges kind of disappeared. It kind of almost leveled the playing field in costing, which I think you kind of mentioned, but that resonated with me because as a classroom teacher working, I saw that firsthand. Like, if I could not give a book to someone, they had access to it via Epic. And then that was awesome because I would rather spend the money and give memberships for Epic, knowing fully that these books are going home and they have access to it for their siblings, for them, for their parents, dual language books so they can learn together, read together, learn languages. And I like that aspect of it. So I hope you're very successful in building your amazing school library, because I think it's invaluable to see the whole world, not just you in Portuguese and English in Brazil, but see your world in a whole bigger perspective, and that library opens it up. So that's really nice to see. Is there anything you wanted to share that you haven't shared already?
Well, I just wanted to mention too that, I'm as I reflect on my experience, I do want to name too that I'm coming from an incredible place of privilege where my school is able to afford to buy books to stock our classroom libraries, which makes this process, this journey of being able to pick and choose the books that I put in the classroom, something that not a lot of other people can do. So I think that there is inherent privilege in the work, in the way that I'm doing it. And I just wanted to kind of name that and share, like you said, that there are obviously ways where you can explore resources to make it a little bit more equitable if you're not coming from a place of the privilege that I am. And I think that like you said, the online resources that we now have that companies were really working to create due to this pandemic, due to this online learning, or that we learn about newly because of this pandemic, like you said, did create a little bit more equity and access. So that's been really cool to watch that aspect of education really shift, because there was a little bit of a mindset before that, online reading or audiobooks or things on the computer didn't really count. It wasn't really reading if you didn't have a book in your hand. And I think that in favor of equity, that mindset has really shifted and kind of gone out the window and allowed us to explore alternate routes to get stories in the hands of kids, which is the most important part. Kids need to have access to stories.
Absolutely. And then that's also another avenue to build a connection with the community, because as much as our students in our classroom need to have equitable access, and I love the word that you use, we need to have communities that have equitable access, right? If you work in a privileged school, is your community as privileged to get access to all the books that they can read? Because that's important to consider. And then I do think it's wonderful that there's a shift in thinking in education. You and I both know that shift has taken place over the past 2 years about opening our minds to virtual reading, writing, typing, exploring print virtually that we've never done before. And that's nice to see where it can go and how it does give access to students to get resources into their hands easily, and money is not a concern, right?
Absolutely.
It's not if you come from a privileged society or not, you still have access to it equally, which right there has leveled the playing field. And as you know, education is everything. It really is, right? It is how the world is going to get a level playing field, and it's nice to see that. So it's wonderful talking to you, and I'm really excited to publish your article. I hope you got your voice out and you got to share your amazing ideas with others through the article. I thank your school for taking a risk with me, asking all these questions and answering them. So Shannon Egan, thank you so much. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes.
Perfect. And then please thank your colleague, Susa Henriquez. Did I pronounce his name correctly?
Inhiki Souza.
Enrique. Okay, I gotta practice that in Portuguese. I thank him for his contribution to the article, and I thank your head of school, Miss Katrina Chan, who opened the door as well to let me have a connection with you and your teaching partner to get to know you guys better. So thank you for your time. It was really nice meeting you, and thank you for sharing your journey.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Take care, Shannon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching and learning with us at SchoolRubric with educators from across the globe. For more access to articles, magazines, podcasts, live episodes, our international school directory, courses, and more, visit us at schoolrubric.org. Thank you.